In everyone's life there comes a turning point, often unexpected. It creeps up unnoticed, after long nights full of worries, after failed endeavors and countless attempts to fix what seems unfixable. A person puts in tremendous effort, strives towards a goal, works hard, meditates, keeps a journal, tries to visualize the desired outcome, prays, makes plans, but no significant changes occur. In despair, they question the heavens. Why is nothing working? And then a bitter yet liberating truth is revealed. They were trying to force their way to what they wanted, clenching their fist, while the universe responds not to force, but to the ability to let go. As Carl Jung once noted, what you resist not only persists, but will grow in size. In other words, by striving to assert their future, deep down a person transmits energy full of doubt and fear. I don't have this. I'm not good enough. I'm afraid. And, strangely enough, the world perceives this very energy, not the words. That is why all efforts do not bring the desired results. It's not about laziness or inadequacy, but about being stuck in survival mode, trying to control what never belonged to them, what will happen next, and will the hero be able to break out of this vicious circle? The answer to this question will be revealed at the very end. A person attracts into their life not what they crave, but what they actually are. If the whole personality is focused on constantly chasing something, on endlessly correcting mistakes and solving problems, then life becomes a mirror image of the inner emptiness from which the individual is desperately trying to escape. But what if we admit that the most powerful action one can take is simply to stop? Stop convulsively grabbing, desperately pushing and proving something, and do this not out of fear or weakness, but out of deep faith and wisdom. After all, it is at the moment of cessation of active actions that the process of becoming begins. When the external noise subsides, the inner unconscious awakens, and when a person finally stops interfering in the natural course of things, their psyche begins to heal. The shadow sides of the personality are integrated, and reality begins to build itself, as if by magic. This is not the end of the efforts made, but the beginning of a long-awaited vacation, not a rejection of the struggle, but a concession to something deeper and timeless. The first chapter of this story says, stop chasing. After all, by constantly chasing, a person only blocks themselves. Modern society has been imposed with the false belief that success comes only through relentless pursuit, and happiness is the result of continuous searching. We are convinced that if we run faster, push harder, and continue to work hard, then what we want will eventually fall into our hands. However, Carl Jung taught not to chase dreams, but to turn inward, asking the question, why am I chasing this at all? After all, often what a person is chasing is not a true desire, but merely an attempt to heal a deeper emotional wound. When an individual desires love so much that this desire consumes all their thoughts, is it really love or just a fear of being rejected again? When a person is obsessed with wealth, do they really need money in itself, or are they still trying to prove their worth to those who once made them feel insignificant? Jung's genius was not in motivation, but in confronting oneself. He argued, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. This means that if you do not bring your wounds to light, they will control your desires and you will not even realize it. A person tends to look for external attributes for what they believe can improve them. However, the reality is that life presents not what you passionately desire, but what reflects your inner state. If there are wounds in the soul, if it is possessed by despair and confusion, then any goal that an individual strives for will seem unattainable. The reason lies in the energy that accompanies their efforts, an energy that broadcasts, I am incomplete, I am unworthy, I need something from the outside to feel self-sufficient. The universe, like a mirror, reflects this vibration. A person cries out, please give me love. But their inner energy screams, I don't have it. And in response they hear only an echo, you're right. That is why people waste their energy pursuing relationships doomed to failure, careers that deplete them, recognition that turns out to be fleeting. The problem is not in the goal itself, but in the I striving for it, bleeding. Obsession is never about the object of passion. It is rooted in the belief that this object can heal inner wounds. And here is the bitter truth. Even if you get what you want immediately, you will not be able to hold on to it because your hands are still trembling from the old pain. Jung's aim was not to teach how to manipulate reality for selfish motives, but to help integrate the soul, to end the pointless chase and face the part of oneself that silently cries out for help. The aspiration should be directed not towards success, but towards wholeness. There comes a tipping point when, before asking anything of the universe, one should ask oneself, what part of me still feels empty? By healing this part, one will stop chasing what never belonged to them and begin to attract what was originally intended for them. It's not about giving up goals, but about purifying motives. It's about becoming a person who needs nothing more, for they have already found wholeness. Only then will the universe cease to test and begin to trust. The second chapter reveals a profound truth about the nature of human existence. The unconscious is always an attentive listener. Many people begin their day feeling that life is testing them, as if the universe is deliberately putting obstacles in their way to test their resilience. However, the reality is much deeper and more individual. One is not being tested, one is being reflected. Life responds not to desires, but to the essence of a person. It's not about loud statements or beautiful social media posts about healing, but about unconscious identity, about the invisible system of beliefs that underlies every decision made. Carl Jung, the eminent psychologist, understood this with absolute clarity. He argued that clarity of vision comes only when one turns their gaze inward. An outward glance only produces dreams, while an inward glance leads to awakening. It is necessary to stop looking for signs in the heavens and start reading the signs hidden in the depths of one's own soul. The truth is that if the unconscious is filled with doubts, fears, traumas, and a sense of unworthiness, no golden ink used to write affirmations on the ceiling will help. One can endlessly repeat the phrase, "I am good enough," but if there is no belief in it deep down, the efforts will be futile. The unconscious cannot be deceived. It hears everything, remembers everything, and controls the dance of life. Even when everything seems to be under control, it is worth admitting that the oppression in the chest when visualizing the future and the anxiety at the thought of how everything will turn out are not intuition, but the cry of the unconscious. Deep down, there is no faith in the possibility of achieving what is desired, and life reflects this. The delay in receiving what is desired is not due to the cruelty of fate, but because the inner energy indicates an unwillingness to accept gifts. So, what should we do in this situation? The answer is simple and paradoxical. We should stop. Stop the relentless pleas, abandon obsessive thoughts, stop masking internal discord with streams of positive information. For true power lies not in feverish activity, but in conscious presence, in the ability to slow down enough to hear the quiet voice of one's own soul. When doubts creep into consciousness, do not run from them. When a wave of fear rises, do not hide it under a mask of motivational speeches. It is necessary to simply remain alone with these feelings, to try to understand their nature. After all, every fear is a message, every hesitation is a signal that our subconscious sends. It speaks to us constantly, but do we have enough courage to listen to it? And here lies the main paradox. It is in moments of inaction, when we stop interfering in the course of events, when we stop rushing divine providence with our human impatience, that real changes begin. It is then that our inner energy comes into harmony, and the subconscious ceases to resist change. And then the universe seems to say to us, "Now you are ready. Your destiny is not to chase perfection, but to become it." And the path to this transformation begins with the ability to be in a state of peace and stillness. Chapter 3. Detachment is not a sign of defeat, but rather a moment of awakening. It is the ability to let go of a situation, not because of surrender to failure or rejection of the desired result, but because of the realization of truth. Man is not given to control the world around him. His task is to understand his place in it. Detachment should not be confused with apathy or indifference. It is not an attempt to convince oneself that nothing matters. On the contrary, it is a return of energy from those areas where it does not belong. It is a state of confidence when one says to oneself, "I have done everything in my power. Now I let go of what is beyond my control." As Carl Jung argued, true transformation occurs not through obsessive ideas, but through the ability to let go. It is not passive submission to fate, but deep inner alignment. It is impossible to imitate detachment. You can't scroll through social media, hypocritically declaring your indifference while checking your phone every minute, waiting for a sign or message from a specific person. The subconscious reacts not to words, but to vibrations. If your inner vibration keeps repeating, "I need this to feel complete," life will repeatedly point out the absence of that wholeness. Detachment is not the absence of desires, but the absence of dependence on them. It's an inner realization that I am good enough even if it never happens. And herein lies the paradox. When a person's energy aligns with this truth, everything starts to fall into place in the best possible way, not because they're making an effort, but because they stop resisting. Life favors those who already feel whole, not those who are desperately seeking additions. Therefore, if at this moment someone is suffering, entangled in a web of expectations and obsessive thoughts, they should stop and ask themselves, what part of me still believes that achieving the desired will bring complete satisfaction? The part that craves love, recognition, or success. This part doesn't need fixing, it needs witnessing, but not from the outside world, not from an ex-partner or parents, but from oneself. The moment a person sees themselves clearly, without judgment or shame, they stop looking for reflections outside and begin to become their own mirror. This is where true transformation begins. There's no longer a need for chasing, pleading, or proving. There is only complete, unconditional, and powerful self-acceptance. Chapter 4. Unleash the Void, the Cradle of Transformation. After you have finally freed yourself from the tenacious embrace of struggle, obsessive thoughts, desperate efforts, and pleading, something completely unexpected happens. There are no signs in sight, no rewards are foreseen, miracles are in no hurry to appear, only all-consuming silence. You open your eyes, and the world around you seems immutable. The phone is silent, your heart still aches with pain. The cherished opportunity is in no hurry to knock on your door. No news, only an inner voice, full of doubts, creeps into your consciousness. Was all this in vain? It is at this moment that many lose faith, because we have been taught since childhood that once you let go of a situation, something wonderful will immediately fill the resulting void. However, the universe lives by its own laws, not subject to human calendars. Its movements are dictated by energetic balance. And before bestowing upon you what you so passionately ask for, it tests you, checking who you have become without it. And so you find yourself in the void, in a space that seems barren but harbors boundless potential. This is a transitional state where your former self has already passed into oblivion and the new one has not yet been born. This space is frightening in its uncertainty, the absence of a clear plan of action, any evidence or external confirmation that you are on the right path. Only you, your thoughts, and the deafening silence that persistently calls you to trust something that is not yet visible. Carl Jung called this state creative emptiness, stating, "In every chaos there is a cosmos, in every disorder a secret order." Periods of apparent calm and external stagnation often conceal deep inner transformation. The human soul is not in a state of inactivity, but actively participates in the process of creation and restructuring. In the depths of the subconscious, a large-scale reorganization takes place, during which old wounds gradually heal and new beliefs take root. The nervous system adapts, preparing to accept what a person passionately desires. However, it is at this moment that a difficulty arises. Since there are no external manifestations of progress, the ego begins to instill doubts about the effectiveness of what is happening. Succumbing to this lie, a person risks sabotaging their own success, again rushing into fruitless pursuits and blocking the positive changes that are imperceptibly forming behind the scenes. The void is not a punishment, but a necessary cleansing. It deprives a person of everything they depended on: external evaluation, illusory control, attachment to the result, until only their true essence remains. And when a person reaches this point, where they stop pursuing goals and start simply being, the universe listens attentively, because energy never lies. You can visualize the desired as much as you like. Repeat affirmations and sing mantras, but if your inner energy still radiates fear and doubt, life will only reflect these negative vibrations. The void is a test that requires embodying the desired result even before it actually occurs. Is a person capable of feeling rich before money appears in their bank account? Can they feel loved before they meet their soulmate? Is it possible to feel freedom without waiting for external changes? If the answer is yes, the waiting time is reduced, the expectation turns into becoming, and immobility turns into magnetism. A person becomes the embodiment of the vibration of their desire, and life has no choice but to reciprocate. But first, it is necessary to pass the test of silence, uncertainty, and frightening emptiness when it seems that nothing is happening. However, it is at this moment that a person becomes everything they are destined to be. In moments when you feel yourself in a shaky void, the main thing is to remain calm and still. Do not give in to panic or try to fix something immediately. You need to focus on your breathing, put your thoughts in order, and listen to yourself. As soon as a state of sacred immobility is reached and the need for constant proof disappears, life will again be filled with sounds, but already in harmony with the inner self. Every desire that arises in the mind is not a random whim or a cruel mockery of fate, but a kind of mirror reflecting deep spiritual needs and tasks. As Carl Jung argued, desires are signals from the unconscious, calling not for the pursuit of external attributes, but for the awakening of internal resources. The desire for money is not just a thirst for wealth, but a need for a sense of security. The desire for relationships is not only a desire for love, but also a desire to be seen and understood. The need for success is not just a search for applause, but a desire to gain confidence in one's own significance. The problem lies not in the desires themselves, but in the unconscious attachment to them. Many people fall into the trap of confusing aspiration with action. They constantly check their phone, reread old messages, and analyze every delay or change in intonation, mistakenly taking this for a manifestation of their desires. However, as Carl Jung's process of individuation teaches, the goal is not to achieve perfection, but to achieve integrity. Integrity arises not from obsession with what is lacking, but from the acceptance and integration of all aspects of the personality: light and dark sides, strength and insecurity, the deepest truth, and even those traits that cause shame. When a person accepts both strengths and weaknesses in themselves, the need for life to constantly fill them disappears. They become self-sufficient. It is important to realize that it is not what you fixate on that attracts, but what you have managed to reconcile with. Therefore, the next time you feel a desire to strive for something, it is worth pausing, not out of laziness, but out of awareness. You need to take a deep breath, close your eyes, and ask yourself which part of the personality still believes that this external object or achievement will make it complete. When an awareness of one's own integrity comes, the feeling of lack and inferiority disappears. Calmness, clarity, and true magnetism replace obsession. A person no longer needs proof of their value from the outside world. And, ironically, it is at this moment that the world begins to react differently, because the person's energy transmits confidence in their self-sufficiency. This is the difference between manifestation out of desperation and magnetism based on inner harmony. You can continue to make efforts, analyze every sign, and look for radical solutions, or you can remain in a state of rest, do nothing, and allow life to catch up with the person you have already become. When the inner work is completed, there is no need for pursuit or requests. All that remains is to allow yourself to receive and simply be. Chapter 6. The Eternal Struggle. The ego strives for control, the soul longs for peace. It's time to face the truth. That part of the personality that constantly reaches for the phone, refreshes email, rereads old messages, looks at the clock every minute and asks, "Why hasn't this happened yet?" is not the higher self, but merely the ego gripped by animal fear. The ego is panicky, afraid of the unknown. It craves certainty, like a traveler in the desert craves water. It needs the illusion of omnipotence to somehow feel safe. And if it does not get what it wants, it loses its mind, begins to predict catastrophes, and fills the nervous system with a sticky horror, passing it off as intuition. But this is a deception. It is not intuition, but ordinary self-doubt, an unhealed fear hiding behind a mask of urgency. Carl Jung, the great Swiss psychiatrist and philosopher, clearly saw this inner war. He not only studied it closely, but also went through this crucible of doubts and anxieties himself. And he revealed to the world that human existence is a continuous confrontation between the ego and the soul. The ego demands irrefutable proof, while the soul quietly whispers the truth. The ego insists, "I must control the situation to avoid further pain," while the soul responds, "I've already endured the worst, let's simply release it." This is the insight that remains elusive to many. The ego is obsessed with achieving outcomes, whereas the soul seeks harmony. The ego needs to know every minute detail of how things will unfold, but the soul is content with merely sensing a favorable outcome, as it exists outside the confines of time. It doesn't chase events, rather, it seems to recall them. Carl Jung once wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And here lies the paradox. Your true self isn't the version gripped by panic and anxiety, but the one concealed beneath that mask of fear, the one who already feels complete and self-sufficient. This authentic version doesn't fear silence or solitude. It doesn't measure its worth by the number of likes on social media, the balance in a bank account, or rigid deadlines. It breathes more deeply, speaks more slowly, moves with grace and fluidity rather than haste and frenzy, because deep down it knows that everything destined for it will inevitably occur, and at the right moment, in divine timing, not when it demands it. However, to access this profound, authentic version of yourself, you must learn to pause, stop, and listen to yourself. In moments of escalating anxiety, it's crucial to halt this destructive whirlwind of thoughts, turning inward with a simple yet profound question. What is driving me in this moment, the ego or my true essence? If you feel oppressive pressure, overwhelming anxiety, or a sense of despair, it's undoubtedly a manifestation of the ego. Conversely, a state of peace, ease, and acceptance indicates the voice of the soul. This isn't a call to abandon aspirations and dreams. Rather, it's a reminder to release excessive attachment to the outcome, to cease suppressing your own expressions with fear. Despair always shouts loudly, while a state of harmony and alignment with oneself manifests quietly and calmly. It doesn't demand constant attention, doesn't beg or strive to chase after anything, it simply exists. Therefore, if you're currently overwhelmed by doubt, avoid amplifying the internal chaos. Refrain from diving into distractions or self-flagellation. Instead, close your eyes, place a hand on your heart, and ask yourself, how would my healed, whole self act right now? And act accordingly, not to guarantee immediate results, but to strengthen the connection with your true nature. Remember, the human task isn't total control over what happens, but co-creation. Creating from a state of panic is simply impossible. Consciously choose inner peace and tranquility, even if it feels uncomfortable, even without visible proof, even if the ego insists it won't bring success. It's in moments of choosing peace over pressure and tension that reality begins to transform. You cease to be a passive observer of your own life, becoming its architect and creator. The inner world becomes a reliable compass, following which you can attain everything destined by fate. Chapter 7. Shadow Work as a Path to Manifestation. It's impossible to build a prosperous life by accepting only your positive qualities. You can't achieve abundance by rejecting the essence that experiences fear, anger, shame, or insecurity. The universe responds not only to aspirations but also to the wholeness of personality. Wholeness implies accepting those aspects of yourself from which you usually flee. Carl Jung called this the shadow, not evil in the Hollywood sense, but rather the suppressed self, those parts of the personality that were buried for the sake of survival, stifled fear, suppressed rage, ignored guilt, worthlessness, masked as ambition. Many believe that manifestation is about visualization and raising vibrations. However, true sustainable manifestation connected to the soul arises not from fantasies, but from the integration of personality. You must face the truth. An obsession with love is often linked not to the feeling itself, but to an inner wound crying out, "If I am loved, perhaps I will finally feel worthy." Diligent work for money is often driven not only by ambition, but also by a deep-seated belief that I am not safe if I don't have enough funds. Herein lies the trap. If manifestations are rooted in the shadow, in a sense of lack, fear, trauma, or worthlessness, then the results will reflect these negative aspects. You inevitably encounter the manifestation of those aspects of life that reflect your internal conflicts. This could be a partner who awakens an old wound of abandonment, financial resources that disappear as quickly as they appear, or success that ultimately feels empty and exhausting. The reason lies in the fact that all these manifestations stem from a fragmented, non-integrated self. In this context, the significance of Carl Jung's work is invaluable, as he emphasized the necessity of becoming aware of the unconscious. Until this work is done, the unconscious controls a person's life, and they tend to explain what is happening as blind fate. Therefore, the key question is not how to attract more blessings, but how to identify internal beliefs about one's own inadequacy. This is where the complex process of working with the shadow begins, requiring a rejection of accusations against the external world and a redirection of the gaze inward. It is important not to look for those to blame for past failures, but to honestly admit to oneself one's own unreadiness for success. This is not about self-flagellation, but about taking responsibility for one's life. It is necessary to provide space for all aspects of one's personality, both light and dark, to recognize their right to exist and to free them from the need to control consciousness. When the shadow comes to light, it loses its power over a person. It no longer plots behind the scenes, does not create chaos to attract attention. The person regains their strength, which leads to a change in their energy frequency. They begin to attract what they want, not out of fear, but out of a sense of inner fullness. This is not just a desire, but a quantum alignment, a state of safety for the nervous system. The person becomes that version of themselves that no longer needs the world to heal their emotional wounds. They stop forcibly achieving their goals, allowing events to unfold naturally. They no longer need to prove anything. They simply shine. They turn to the universe not out of need, but out of abundance. They become that version of themselves that already possesses everything necessary. It is this inner state that transforms the external world. It's not about scripts, vision boards, or searching for signs, but about a deep, ingrained integration of all aspects of personality. This is a complex task, far from the glossy version of spirituality, requiring an honest look in the mirror and an acknowledgement. I tried to manifest my future without reconciling with my past, but now everything has changed. There is no more room for escape. It's time to delve into oneself and face what has silently controlled one's life. When this happens, illusions crumble, strength returns, and life begins to reflect the integrity of the personality, not its wounds. This is true manifestation, individuation, and freedom. Chapter 8. Don't become an obstacle to your own destiny. Perhaps this is one of the most bitter truths, but it should be recognized that the only obstacle between you and the life you dream of is you, yourself. Not your past with its traumas and not some cosmic forces, but you. Carl Jung, the eminent psychoanalyst who keenly explored the depths of the human soul, once remarked, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." And this is indeed the case because genuine self-acceptance requires confronting those aspects of personality that a person has avoided throughout their life: guilt, shame, regret, fear that they may not be good enough. Instead of turning inward, the individual rushes into the external world, seeking validation in other people, desperately fighting for love and striving for success. However, these manifestations do not come from self-belief, but from a desire to escape oneself. But the harsh truth is that everything a person tries to escape from ultimately begins to avoid them. It seems that they are striving for the life of their dreams, but in reality they are using this dream as a way to avoid silence and confrontation with who they are in the present moment. The universe in this case does not punish, but protects, understanding that if a person were to receive everything they wanted now, they would not be able to withstand it, since a part of them still does not feel worthy of it. Dion emphasizes another profound truth. Without fully accepting oneself, a person becomes fragmented. Their conscious self craves more, but the unconscious self resists, feeling unprepared. This inner struggle creates a conflicting energy, a tug-of-war between desire and disbelief, forming a magnetic field that repels what should be attracting. A person becomes a blocker of their own destiny not out of weakness, but because they continue to act based on an outdated version of themselves, a version shaped by the wounds of the past, taught to conquer love, not to accept it as a given. The tragedy is that most people spend their lives chasing results, while they need to change their identity. It is important not just to do more, but to become that version of oneself that does not need to achieve anything, that already feels what they are striving for, that believes in their worth, readiness, and sufficiency. After all, according to universal law, a person receives not what they want, but who they are. A person becomes who they are in their inner world. If a feeling of unworthiness is lurking deep inside, then despite all the affirmations spoken, the subconscious will repeatedly sabotage any prospect, any relationship, any opportunity for healing. The reason lies in the dissonance between energy and intention. And if things aren't moving forward right now, if there's a sense of blockage, it's not that the universe is ignoring requests, but that the internal state is broadcasting, "I still don't believe I deserve this." And the universe merely reflects this truth again and again, not to punish, but to awaken. Therefore, one should stop blaming the world around them, attributing everything to bad luck, and wondering why nothing works out. Instead, one needs to turn inward and ask, what part of me is still convinced that suffering must precede receiving what is desired? As soon as the pursuit of results ceases and work begins on developing self-esteem, the situation will begin to change. Not instantly and not magically, but gradually, organically, from the inside out, like any true transformation. It is important to realize a person is not stuck and not cursed. They are simply being offered the opportunity to rise to a new level, to grow, to become the version of themselves that is capable of containing what the soul asks for, not for a moment, but for a lifetime. And when this inner transformation occurs, there will be no need to forcibly push the manifestation of the desired. The person will become that manifestation themselves. This is not magic, but alignment, individualization. Gaining the strength to finally fully accept oneself. In the final chapter of this study, the deepest truth is revealed, which Carl Jung conveyed between the lines of his teachings. This truth has such power that it is capable of not only changing the way of thinking, but also restoring identity itself. It is about the fact that a person does not manifest what they desire, but remembers. For a long time it was believed that we are building a new life, attracting something from the outside, an ideal partner, success, harmony, prosperity. Efforts were made, affirmations and visualizations were used, work was done with the shadow and healing in desperate attempts to bring the desired into reality. But what if the true task is not to attract, but to reveal what has always been inside? Carl Jung's genius was not in helping people get more, but in showing that they initially had everything they needed. All the elements they were striving for are actually parts of themselves that they abandoned in the process of life. It is necessary to deeply realize this. The version of the person who possesses the desired love already exists. This is not an image from the future, but the original design. However, at some point, the noise of the outside world became too loud. The world convinced us of the need to constantly strive for something in order to matter, to deserve our worth, to fight for love, to sacrifice our truth for recognition. Thus, forgetting occurred, forgetting one's integrity, divinity, natural harmony. The power was not lost, but only the connection with it was lost. And now, going through the path of healing, development, and self-knowledge, a person is not building anything new and is not starting from scratch. They are only getting rid of everything superficial: fear, guilt, the need to prove, perfectionism, reflections, attachments, false ideas. All this is just interference, hiding the true voice of the soul. Jung did not offer a system for fixing oneself because he understood something that escapes the attention of most. Deep within each person lies a true self, buried under layers of anxieties and doubts. This is not the personality we are used to seeing, not a mask created by years of emotional neglect and spiritual oblivion, but a witness, a soul that holds memories of peace. This soul does not strive for achievements, because it already has everything it needs. It does not grasp at opportunities, because it is already the embodiment of the desired. The truth is that, freeing oneself from the constant struggle and the desire to control one's life, a person returns to their original frequency, the one with which they were born. This state does not require proof, it only needs to be remembered. That is why, when we let go of the situation, circumstances begin to develop favorably. This is not a trick, but a return to a natural state of trust and being. When the soul takes over the ego, energy replaces effort, and harmony replaces anxiety. If a person is still trying to force their way into the future with the power of thought, striving to subordinate the divine to their plans, they should stop. The universe is not opposing them, but only trying to remind them of what has been forgotten. We came into this world not to beg for the life we desire, but to remember that it already belongs to us. We only need to become the version of ourselves that is capable of accepting it. Don't think that time is lost, that we are broken or lagging behind. We do not manifest what we desire, but remember it, and now we have remembered enough. It's time to return to tranquility, to trust the soul that already knows the answers. What is destined from above does not require a chase. It arrives at the moment of true becoming. In this process, there is no room for coercion or pleas, only acceptance, reception, and awareness of one's existence. This is a homecoming to one's true self. If even one phrase from this message has touched the depths of your soul, do not rush to scroll past it. Do not let this moment get lost in the flow of information, like fleeting content that is forgotten in an instant. This is not just a video, it is a mirror, a reflection of the inner world, a message destined to find its addressee. It is not a coincidence, but a pattern. As Carl Jung stated, we will inevitably meet again and again, appearing in thousands of guises on life's path. Perhaps this video is one such manifestation, a reflection, an impulse, a spiritual test, a reminder that the purpose of a person is not to chase a phantom world, but to return to oneself. If this realization has visited you even for a moment, it is worth capturing it in your consciousness, not to attract attention or collect likes, but to affirm before your subconscious, I let go, I align, I receive. This time, the choice is made in favor of harmony, not obsession, in favor of self-knowledge, not survival, in favor of becoming, not pleading. By leaving a like, a person is not just supporting the algorithm, they are reinforcing this energy in their nervous system, signaling to their psyche the importance of this moment, the readiness for change. Subscribing to the channel is not following superficial trends and short-term motivation, but immersing oneself in deep Jungian truths that can transform a person from within. This is not just a channel, it is a journey, a path for souls seeking awakening. And, most importantly, this revelation should be shared with loved ones, with those who are lost in routine, who are chasing everything but themselves. After all, as Carl Jung said, true vision is gained only when a person looks into their heart. The external world gives birth to dreams, the internal world awakens. The moment of awakening has come to turn one's gaze inward, to cease fruitless searches and find true vision. In a world obsessed with greatness, stillness becomes rebellion, presence becomes strength, and inaction becomes the boldest act. Breathe, feel, remember. You are not manifesting, you are remembering, and your return begins